What's up, guys? I'm Alex.
I'm Jason. We're the Table Monkeys, and today we are going to get back to our triad of arm wrestling techniques.
Yes, we're going to finish this series talking about the Low Hand Toproll. So 2.0 the Low Hand Toproll, one of my favorite moves. One of your least favorite moves?
Yeah, definitely not a move that I have figured out yet. It's I'm trying to figure out. I'm working on it, and we'll discuss like what some of the necessities of it are and why I'm having trouble with it. But of all three of the moves, it's maybe the most technical.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the whole hill, like if you don't have like the right answer for a low hand top roll is a post, but a press is also a good answer for it. So we're talking about these three: the post, the low hand, and the hook. But the other moves on the hill will also kind of be answers for different moves, and they all do kind of work together. So I don't have a low hand, I have a king's move, so I do have an answer for a hook, but the low hand is tricky. It's not working for me.
The reason why we call it a triad is because they all work well against each other. So the post works well against the low hand, low hand works well against the hook, and hook works well against the post. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
So as Alex said, we're going to finish off this kind of series talking about these three, and we also think of these as kind of the three most fundamental basic moves. So that's why you should start with these three before you learn how to king's move or flop press and that kind of stuff. But if you do learn that first, then whatever, it happens. But
if you start in Toronto, you might learn.
Yeah, probably, and the flop press. But anyway, so finishing off the low hand, the way we did this for the last two moves, we started talking about the keys to finishing this move, then the main lanes that you're going to use when doing this move, then regripping with this move, the transitions that you have with this move, and then the last thing, kind of setup tricks if this is the move that you're going to go for. So the first thing that we want to start with is the key to finishing.
Key to finishing, yeah. So low hand requires a lot of fundamentals in the setup, and you want to gain a lot off the go. So the way I like to think about it is you want to gain position off the go, set yourself up for success in a good position, and then go offensively and try to get the pin.
Yeah, and if you're looking at this, like, so just we'll put cards up in the window, so like for the post, for example, you're looking for speed. Like you need to really hit that move fast, you need to hit high, but it's really about explosiveness and getting it done quickly, that you catch your opponent off guard to get the pin. With a hook, it's about commitment. It's about making sure that you're fully committed to the move, getting inside, getting your shoulder behind it, and just again being fully committed to it. And now with this move, like Alex is saying, it's about hitting for position, getting in the position that you need, and that also is because this is really more of a counter than an offensive move. Some people are so good at it, like a Matt Mask or an Hermes Gasparini, funny how that match works out, that they can use it offensively, and when doing so, it can be really dangerous. But for the most part, most people that learn it, and when you start using it, and where it can be the most effective is defensively against a hook, right?
Yeah. So the low hand top roll is very much like a parry. If you're going against the hooker, which is where the low hand really shines, they're coming forward at you, trying to get their wrist around you, they're bringing their shoulder forward. So the low hander is absorbing that pressure, dragging back, and going at this kind of 45-degree angle this way, as opposed to the hooker who's going forward at this 45-degree angle. So you're able to absorb that pressure and use that to gain position in your hand.
Yeah.
So that's why it's kind of defensive, but then once you have that position, that's when you can start your offensive lanes, which we'll talk about next.
Yeah, exactly. And part of where it becomes offensive is when, like Alex said, this move requires a lot of fundamentals to be really sound. So when you get someone like Matt Mask, whose his containment is so strong, his hand just in general has become so dominant that he can just gain those fundamentals right off the go. That's how he's able to use it offensively, where, like Alex is saying, with this move traditionally against the hook, so if I'm hooking against you, when I come into hook, he's proficient with the move, he's gotten into my fingers, he's taken away so much of this move, he doesn't really need to be extremely strong in comparison to me in this position, because he's gotten so much position off the go, right?
Yeah.
So now we've gotten into the move. Let's talk about the lanes, right?
So let's talk about like what you need in that positioning.
Okay,
so the strengths that are required here. So obviously this is top roll, so you need back pressure. Outside of the strap, there is more post involved, but generally this is more of a dragging style top roll. And then pronation is really the key in the hand. I really need to keep my pronation that's the key to stopping his hook, and for me to gain access to all the other offensive pressures. And then also containment.
Yeah, and containment is where someone, again, like a Matt Mask, who even out of the strap is going to be able to combine his his drag or connect his drag to the move, is because he's able to use this containment here, and like a BLM's really good at that too, right?
Yeah.
Like, because he's so connected with these 3 fingers and leaving this finger floating. He's able to get this part of his hand so high while holding so much containment here. The strap just gives him another angle for it, but you'll see both of them beat people out of the strap because they're so dominant with their containment.
Yeah, the way I like to think about it is I'm containing and dragging through these bottom fingers, and then I'm rising up through the wrist and pronating through the thumb. And that's why low hand is so hard, because it combines so many different things.
Yeah.
But it's drag, it's back pressure, I'm maintaining pronation, and I'm gaining wrist flexion. Those are the 3 main things.
Yeah, exactly. And then once you've established those things, let's get back to that, and I'll talk about the lanes, right? So you're into your opponent's fingers. You've contained some of their thumb. So I'm not I'm not hooked in, like this is where I'd want to be, right? But now he's got the high position, he's turned me over. So like if you lost that battle, if I was just too strong, you would end up here. It would end up looking like this. And though it might not be straight to a pin right away, like I might have to work around that a bit. I'm in a much better position to work. I still have control of so many of my fundamentals. And though he looks like he has some cup, and it looks like maybe it's similar to being here, that difference in my position really changes what you have access to, right?
Exactly.
And the main thing, although you might not be able to see, I mean, you can see it when I take it out, but it's this pronation that's gone, which if you watch our first video, throw a card up in the window about the low hand, we talk about how the main fundamental is actually pronation, right?
Yeah.
Which is, for me, is what is lacking. For some reason, when I drop, well, not for some reason, for a lot of people, once they drop their riser, they don't have the same pronation. Like if we're in a posting battle, once his riser goes, I know that I'm going to be able to take his pronation much easier now, and that's what I'm looking for when I'm posting. So for me, when I try to pronate with my riser down, or even just hold static pressure, like when I'm here, Alex's ability to cut me in, it's really hard for me to hold any kind of pressure there. But if we go here and I do it this way, it's like a wall. It's completely different. And so that's what I have to figure out with training or whatever, is how to connect my pronation while my riser is dumped. Alex with his left hand, and you said on your right it's not the same.
No.
Yeah. So he's got that connection there, and that's what makes this so proficient, that once he's here, even if I'm able to get my hand up here somehow through regripping and stuff, this is still so solid, where if it was just turned out a bit like that, there's a lot more to attack, right?
Exactly. Yeah, so you really want to gain that off the go, keep your pronation locked, and gain this tight arm position. And then once you're there, you've got like obviously 90 degrees of angle to attack to. I'm just going to talk about what you're doing sideways and what you're doing back. If I'm attacking sideways, I'm trying to attack his shoulder, and the way that you do this is it's all through pronation. And you'll see a lot of low hand top rollers mix it up with the angle that they choose to pull in, depending on their opponent. But you'll see Alex Kardeccia do this a lot, where he's kind of like rolling you straight down to the pad with his thumb. He's maintaining everything here, and he's just hitting right to the side, like he's trying to smash you right down into the pad. Very effective and kind of brutal way to attack. Matt Mass is also really good at this.
Blast off, here we go! Oh, it's an absolute
Just like I expected. Give me that money down there.
Wow!
Tighten in on Yannis Amelins, but Amelins cannot finish from there. And Hollands has dug tight. Tom Holland, wow!
On the face of Nicholas Navastad, drives to the back of the pad, using that long lever. Big sweep to the side.
You see Chance Shaw do that a lot too.
Yeah.
And that's mainly the side hit. Like if I were to do it to you, it's so once you're here, again, like Alex said, it's everything is through pronation. So I feel like I'm just trying to fire my thumb. Once I break the center line, I just feel like now I'm almost like pressing. Like Alex said, I'm trying to go straight down once I've gotten like past the center line, So, but again, I feel like I'm just leading it with my thumb the whole way through, and then even for the like other direction, going straight back. And like Alex said, depending on who you're pulling, you're either gonna mix these hits up, like one way, the other way, or somewhere in between. You might have a sweet lane that like you find if you just hit like a 45-degree angle, kind of like Dustin.
Yep.
Dustin has like kind of a 45-degree hit that way that is just deadly. So depending on you and depending on your opponent, it's going to be somewhere in between these lanes, but it's always going to be going through the thumb and through pronation.
Yeah, but in that one, you're not really trying to break open their fingers as much. You've got your position, and you're just going for the pin.
Yeah.
Now, the back pressure alternative, where you're going more backwards, is going to attack the person's bicep and also their fingers. Because now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to post up with my wrist, and that applies a lot more pressure into his fingers, and I can just continue breaking open Jason's fingers like that just by pulling back, and it's also very effective. He may slip underneath.
Yeah, if we're in a strap, obviously, that's like I'm not going to have a way to get out, and that's kind of where we said maybe if you have a strong press, you might be in a good position against a low hand. But like Alex said, depending on what you want to attack, like if you choose that you want to attack your opponent's hand and bicep, you're going to go more backwards. Well, that's because you've decided that's the right place to attack. If I have a really strong elbow and I'm really good at keeping my shoulder committed, that might be the easiest place to attack, might be the wrong place to attack. You know what I mean? Like if you watch Matt Mask versus Jerry Cataret, maybe we can throw the replay up here. You're going to notice how the way Matt beats him is by going to the side and being able to get him far enough outside of the shoulder that like he's got his hand from before the match even goes. It's not about him trying to take his hand more there. It's about him getting him outside his shoulder. And once he does get him outside his shoulder, then he's able to get on top of his hand and actually press him. Which leads us to the transitions. We'll get there. Should we go there now? And then do
But so just to summarize, you're gonna mix and match both those pressures and in between, right? So you've got your sideways pressure where you're maintaining everything strong and you're kind of just bringing them straight down to the pad, somewhat similar to a pressing action. And then you've got your more posting style low hand top roll where you're bringing your wrist up. You may even bring your elbow forward to gain more height, and you're really trying to break open your opponent's fingers.
And again, it's what are you trying to attack? Either you're trying to attack his shoulder or his hand and his bicep. And if you're trying to attack his shoulder, you need to go to the side. And if you want to attack his hand and bicep, you got to pull him away. So I guess, and then in those two moves are the two regrips, right? So let's like say if you're, shut up. Okay. So in those two moves are the two regrips, right? So if you want to go through my hand and maybe through the strap or through my hand, you find a stop. So go for it, and I'll there. So slow you down here. Your regrip is.
My regrip is a traditional regrip where I'm coming forward, supinating to gain height. So I'll rise up, I'll open my hand, I'll supinate, and then I'll return back to my low hand, pulling through this part of my wrist.
And so that's you're trying to go back, you're trying to attack your opponent's hand. Your regrip is going to be forward supinating, trying to gain some of their thumb position, trying to take some of that away.
Don't supinate like your pronation away and get into a hook. You don't want that. It's just a little supination, just a little bit to gain some height, and then you're right back into it.
And it's almost more like even internal rotation, like you're just putting it through the supination. You're not actually supinating your hand. You're just changing the direction of pressure from being right here to being a little bit here. And then if you combine that with coming forward and all that, you should be able to turn your opponent's thumb a little bit more. So as you go for their hand again, it's more exposed. And then the other regrip would be to the side. So now you attack my shoulder. I give you a bit of a stop. As you get that stop, that's when, usually in that position, I would probably be forcing back this way. So your regrip, you're kind of giving up some ground and then trying to rise through your wrist more. That's like when you're pushing your elbow forward.
So this is more of that defensive style low hand top roll where I'm coming back towards this side of the pad, I'm pulling this way and using his sideways pressure to gain height into his hand.
And then hit to the side again. So now the leverage that he's gained on my hand should create more force against my elbow, which is going to put more force on my shoulder, which should take me outside of my shoulder more. So the height that he's trying to get is to be able to push at a further point away from my elbow to the side, as opposed to the other one where he's trying to turn my hand over so he can expose my wrist more. In this one, he's trying to gain height on his like attachment point on my hand to affect the levers to attack my shoulder more.
Yeah,
right?
But if he keeps stopping me and I'm still not able to get a pin, I might have to transition.
Yeah.
And the best transition that comes easily from a low hand top roll, especially if you've gained enough hand position and position within the match, is a press.
Yeah.
So
So we're talking about one offensive, one defensive. So
Yeah.
the offensive, as Alex said, once you get enough position, and usually works great against somebody whose shoulder you're trying to attack. You know,
Yeah.
like if you're attacking someone's hand, maybe you might come up and press there too.
Yeah.
If they have a really strong bicep, you know, somebody who can have their hand exposed but be out here on their bicep, you might do it. But you're going to see it a lot more on a side pressure battle, I feel like.
So this part is really sticky, but I've got my pronation and my hand set. I just can't continue applying the pressure through the top roll. I'm gonna have to bring my shoulder up to get it behind my hand, and then while keeping my pronation. So I'm still maintaining this sideways pressure in my low head position. I'm just gonna keep that while I bring my shoulder behind it. And then once I do that, then I can apply my pressing pressure, which is straight down, forward, while I've got everything in my hand, and I should be able to get the victory there.
And I think this that transition can be really tricky because you're going against somebody with a lot of side pressure in that position. So this is very similar to how John got injured, actually, which throw a card up in the window if you can remember. Card up in the window if you can remember, and that was a previous match that we had. It was a great match, but
there's a little bit of a dead zone, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it was in this exact same combination of moves where I'm Mick and I'm pressing, and you're John and you're trying to top roll me, and he couldn't get through, and he went to make that transition. And if you do it by trying to like turn the match in like this, that's where you're putting a ton of rotational pressure on your elbow, where you still want to hit and use that stop of a hit to kind of pull yourself up to position. So you're not actually like where if you're pushing against me, where I'm trying to push through that like this, you know? And sometimes that feels really good. Actually, it feels like I'm just overpowering somebody, so it's really fun to do, and that's actually how I've learned that it's horrible to do, because you feel like that in practice and you just go and like do it to somebody and then your elbow is destroyed for like a week. So you still, even though you're hitting to the side, you still have to kind of create some sort of drag or back pressure to pull yourself up so that you're not pulling yourself up through sideways rotation on your elbow. That's where this transition can get a little tricky.
Because once he puts that stress on his elbow, and I notice he's transitioning to put his shoulder in the match, I'm going to try and hit him outside of his shoulder.
Yeah.
And that's where that can cause an injury.
Yeah, and this is where it's important styles making matches. If I'm a low hand top roller like this, the chances are my elbow integrity is not as good as somebody who's pulling the way that the presser is pulling in this position. So as we meet in that transition point, even if he doesn't feel it and all of a sudden apply more pressure, it's just going to become a whose connective tissue is stronger, as if I'm trying to make that transition solely by pushing to the side and pulling myself across the table sideways, not pulling myself up to my arm, right? That's where it's just the chances are that mine's not as strong as his, and it's like meets that point of where they're both our ligaments are basically fighting each other for that split second, and mine will just kind of give out a little bit.
So speed helps you here too, right? So if you can quickly get your shoulder behind it, so that lag time isn't as delayed, and your opponent has less time to react, and you have less time to get injured by a sideways hit once in that space between you getting your shoulder behind it.
Yeah, but still, I think the important part is knowing that pressure, as much as it looks like we're turning the match this way, we're pulling ourselves up. You're not hitting to the side and then turning on your elbow this way. You're hitting to the side, pulling yourself up it looks very similar. Maybe you can't even see the difference in the camera, but the pressure is completely different from this to this. And that's important. And like Alex said, you also do it quickly so that you don't have any lag time in there where they can actually, like, because even though I'm pulling myself up, my elbow still has to cross that threshold. I'm just not doing it through this force, I'm doing it through this force. But if as I'm doing that, I do it like, oh yeah, this could work nice and easy like that. There's a big gap there for him to fire to the side where I'm not applying this way, but it's exposed, right? So
definitely.
That might have been a little lengthy in explanation, but that is a dangerous transition.
Yeah, we just saw our boy get injured, so that's why we're
maybe a little sensitive for that. And now the next transition, defensive, if you go for it, and the right counter for this move is a post. Right? So
I'm low-handing.
Yeah, you want to do the counter, the hook? Okay, so we're like this, and I sell like I'm coming into hook, so he starts to low hand, and as I feel him low handing, I've got enough sense and table IQ that I start to post.
And now I know that he's posting, I know the right transition or right counter into a post is a hook, so then I commit my shoulder and supinate and gain more wrist flexion. Now I'm obviously in a defensive hook here, and he's still got a better position than me, but I've stopped the match. My hand isn't at risk anymore, so I can work from here.
Yeah, and if I'm a really good hooker and you're not a good hooker as a low hand top roll, this transition might not work out good for you.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not going to work out if I post you. So again, why you want to know all the moves and be versatile is because if you go against somebody who can play more than one card against you, it's easy to get pigeonholed into a corner where you don't have a way out, right? So if you're only good at low hand top rolling and you're going against somebody who can sell both either hooking or posting on you and play you like that, it leaves you at a disadvantage. So you got to work both of them. But if you have a good enough hook, if our hooks are somewhat comparable and it came down to like which move are we going to use, and we do this, Alex ends up in a better hook than me.
Well, you're closer to the pin pad, but I've got more height.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like that's what I meant is that if we had have gone, maybe we went for a hook from the beginning and I got into a better position off the go and I could work like to here or something, because it was low hand, which forced me to post, which then brought me in. Now I'm in a hook where originally I wanted to be, but I didn't get there the way I wanted to be. So I'm a little bit, now I've got to work, and he's got a lot of opportunities to open me up if his hook is somewhat comparable.
Yeah.
But if you don't have an elbow or any kind of hooking power there and you do that transition, you might get flattened. And that's more of a warning for newer pullers trying that in practice, where they go into the hook and they go, hey, that didn't work. I thought, well, if your hook is shit, it is going to be shit. So,
yeah, you got to be strong everywhere.
yeah, exactly. Same with that transition to a press. If you have absolutely no pressing strength whatsoever, if like a press just does not feel good to you, but the low hand for some reason naturally feels really good to you, that transition might take a while before it feels at all good to you.
Yeah.
Right? So
100%.
The transitions are based on both moves being proficient, right?
Yeah.
So last thing we'll get to is going to be setups.
Yeah.
So one of the things with this move and the setups is it really depends on your opponent, kind of like we mentioned earlier with this move in a lot of ways. Yeah, and I think that has to do with the initial point in this move about how it's about position and the fundamentals and having to control a lot of them. So that's kind of what's going on in the setup. It's basically impossible to get everything you want in the setup. We're going to start by explaining everything you want, and then you're going to kind of have to adjust, and we'll give a couple examples of like what you can do off the go to sort of get the thing that you didn't get in the setup. Is that I think that's the best way to kind of go through it, right? So the three main things are fat thumb, high wrist, and far thumb. So what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah, so fat thumb would be getting my thumb to the side. So this space is really fat. High thumb would be bringing that up now, so I'm far away, or far thumb. So I'm far away from my opponent.
Or from your index finger. You think about your thumb tip and your index tip as far away as possible, while having your thumb tip as far away from your exterior of your hand as possible.
Yeah, and then the wrist high, right? So this wrist as high as possible allows me to get my elbow as far forward as possible, so I can keep my forearm as vertical as possible.
Yeah, and then one thing that's really interesting in the setup, as we've been kind of doing this video, kind of realized, because I've been noting my low hand is shit. One thing that Alex notes is that you can keep, like, you have two separate risers. You can rise from your wrist, but you can also rise from your first knuckle. So what he likes to do is he likes to make sure that his first knuckle, and if you watch guys like BLM, he's one of the guys that we've definitely studied a lot on how he does this move to figure it out. He's always got this knuckle engaged really, really, really high, but he's got his wrist dumped here to get his, like this part of his wrist up so he can get that really vertical forearm. And I've noticed that if I dump this knuckle, then my pronation feels fucked. But if I keep this knuckle engaged, all of a sudden my pronation, even if my wrist is dumped, feels a lot stronger. So I think that's really important to know in the setup, is that as much as you're dumping your wrist, you're still trying to keep your riser knuckle as high as possible.
Yeah, and then you get this, that's why it looks so fucking weird. Like you got this weird claw hand going on.
Yeah, and then you're also ducking or widening your thumb, right?
Yeah.
You're making a fat thumb, so yeah. And then now the thing with that is when you come in to get a grip with that person, left hand, because that's where our pads are. Like, so now this, again, usually used against a hook, so I'm gonna set up as if I wanna set a hook, and he's gonna set up for his low hand, and he's gonna get as much of this as possible, and we'll see what I can get back in the setup. So
I'm also trying to be shallow in his hand because he wants depth as a hooker.
yeah, I wanna be here. If I could grab him like this, again, which is why you see this happen all the time. Against this, you see raise their elbow, grab around that, yeah, and then this move, keeping the thumb away. So far thumb in that position, that's what he's thinking. He's trying to keep his thumb away from me. The ref should tell me elbow down, all that bullshit. So if I try to,
he's not back pressuring, but
anyway, if I try to get an actual grip, even here, I feel like, okay, I feel good. I got his thumb a bit, and then he wraps around. Now the ref is gonna turn us out. Like even if I get really around him here, oh, okay, I feel like I got good shit. Once the ref turns us out, all of a sudden there's a big gap here, and I feel like I'm on the edge of this bone, where before I felt I was around it, now I feel like I'm on the edge of it.
yeah, I use that rollout to rise my wrist up into his pinky and separate our hands a bit. So now he has less control over my hand. I feel his fingers a lot more, and he has less of a connection to his wrist flexion.
Yeah, exactly. And the main thing for me as a hooker is I feel this gap here, and I feel, like you said, no connection here. So like I can feel, because I can post and I like posting, I can feel that this is available right now. But if I'm trying to go here, I'm feeling very like not happy with where we are. And this is where this can be effective. This is where BLM did this to Curtis Cameron, is because Curtis is all about power and strength. Because I feel a little not connected, I'm like, I want to just pull it in. I want to just get there. Yeah. So I'm fighting exactly the wrong direction for what like I should be against.
Yeah, and I would just let him squeeze and try to fight for that pressure, because if that burns out, it's going to make it a whole lot easier for me.
Yeah, to just buckle that wrist back. So, and that's again how this is more of a counter move. It's more of a like making your opponent initiate and then absorbing that pressure, adjusting to it accordingly. So let's say you don't get. Let's say I'm in this position and I'm posting. Like, so now if he's a low hander and I'm posting, it's not going to be as much about that depth now and getting away from me. It's going to be a little bit more about this containment.
For me, as the low hander.
For you.
Yeah, so if I'm going against poster, I don't care about it being shallow. I want more containment so I can hit and initiate with wrist flexion. Because if I can turn the posting top roller around, so I can turn it up, and he has no access to back pressure now because he's lost his pronation, I'm in a much better spot.
Yeah, and maybe I get turned over like this and I feel like I can still pull in the back pressure. He's in a perfect spot to just roll my hand and take my hand out. So, so that's basically the main differences in setup. If you're going against somebody who's trying to hook you and get depth, you want that thumb far and fat. And if you're going against somebody who's trying to post, you want to try to get good depth with your fingers to try to get some hard containment. And again, you might not get everything in the setup, so you got to feel what it is you're missing. If you feel like, let's say you're going against a hooker, and maybe I'm more of a drag like hooker, like that's trying to come this way on you, you might want more containment. You might not feel like you got it off the go in order to maintain the depth and shit that you want here. So you're not going to initiate as much into my fingers as you are into my containment, or sorry, as you are into your containment onto my thumb, trying to keep me turned over so I don't have as much access to this dragging hook that I want. So again, that's why like we could go on for hours about the low hand and all the different little setups, but try to think critically about what it is your opponent wants and then what it is that you can do to take that away, because that's the main thing you want to do with the low hand is take their power away, and then all of a sudden it makes your move way more powerful.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's everything.
I think that, that summarizes it, or I don't know if that summarizes it. That's the video, probably the longest one. Again, the most complicated move. I'm still figuring it out. I really don't, I understand it. I just can't perform it. There's obviously strengths and connections that aren't there yet.
Yeah, that's the same way I feel about King's moving.
Yeah.
I understand the theory, but putting it into practice against people who are near my strength is very difficult.
Yeah, and same for me with like flop pressing off the go. Like you're good at that, or just pressing in general off the go. I still haven't connected that. We're starting to find some things, and all of these moves people find or do naturally. So they think like, oh, you just do that, you know, like you're good, that's your move, you're good at it, so that's why you know how to do it. They all do it for a reason. There's all some sort of technique that they can feel naturally that allows them to do that move or this move. So all of them are learnable. It's just a matter of learning them so you understand them. Once you understand them, you start to analyze yourself and be like, okay, what is it that I'm missing? Like I'm realizing the pronation for this move with my wrist dump doesn't feel good. I've got to start to figure out a way to train that, because I'm always training pronation with my wrist like as intact as possible, which is why the King's move maybe feels good to me. You know, so it's all like varies, and you can get good at all of them. It's all just about
that's my goal. I want to get good at everything.
Yeah,
I'll be as well rounded as possible.
Yeah, that's 100% my goal.
I'm King's moving, I'm pressing, I'm hooking, I'm top rolling, I'm doing everything.
Yeah,
and you should be too, and that's why you watch this video.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Hopefully, got this far in it, because like we said, this series has been cool. We got a lot of good responses on it. Maybe we'll start to break down the other moves next.
Yeah.
I think we've exhausted these 3 moves pretty good. But if you do have more questions about them, if you want to see some other moves, let us know what the next move we should do is, or any of that kind of stuff.
Leave that shit down in the comments.
Yeah.
Like the video, share, subscribe, hit that bell.
All of those things.
And hook down.